Hello, book reading humans. Book Goblin here. So today I wanted to continue a discussion of the Stormlight archive books, and I feel I want to do it in the context of comparing them to the Wheel of Time. I'll probably mention before that the Wheel of Time are some of my favourite books, possibly my favourite books. Written by Robert Jordan, but the final 3 books were completed by Brandon Sanderson after the sad passing of Robert Jordan. And years later, Brandon Sanderson has written the Stormlight archive. And I can't help thinking and feeling that the Stormlight archive is quite heavily influenced by the Wheel of Time books. Now, this is not a criticism. I think that the Stormlight archive is awesome. I'm very glad it's been written, and to be inspired by another series, I think is a wonderful thing. So I thought I'd discuss some of those thoughts. Now, the first similarity is the ultimate goal of the books, the story. That being to unite humanity, or unite the nations of a continent against a common enemy. But you might argue that that's not an uncommon goal, so fair enough. But the part where these books, I really feel that the similarities and inspiration comes in the form of the characters. The key character in The Wheel of Time is Rand al'Thor, the Dragon Reborn, who's destined to unite humanity and fight the Dark One. And I feel this character, in its port to the Stormlight archive, was kind of split into 2 characters, those being Kaladin and Dalinar. So Rand al'Thor is a character who starts off as a farmer, becomes a leader, somewhat against his will, through necessity. But he's someone who feels a lot of responsibility for those under his care, and because of circumstances, some of those people get hurt or die. And both these characters, Rand and Kaladin, they take that very personally, sort of keeping a mental log of everyone they feel they've let down. And other than that, they're both quite fearsome warriors, intent on honing their skills, quite responsible leaders, but both with that sort of small town background. While, if we move on to comparing Rand and Dalinar, they both have the responsibility of unifying the world, or at least trying to. And the other similarity they have is voices in their head that they don't know if they're real or not. With Rand, it's the thoughts and ramblings of the somewhat crazy Lews Therin Telamon, the dragon. With Rand being the Dragon Reborn. He doesn't know if they're real or not. He doesn't know if it's him going crazy, while Dalinar is having dreams telling him to do slightly odd stuff. And he doesn't know if he is going crazy or if the dreams are really messages from God, the Almighty, whatever force you want to call it. So, yeah, this is something they have in common. Both have messages in their head, don't know if they're real. And subsequently, both of them find out they kind of are real. And both feel a great sense of relief at that. Not crazy. Oh, who said that? That's probably enough about them. Let's move on to some other characters. So let's talk about a character type. There's the lovable charmer. In The Wheel of Time, that's filled by Matt Calthon. A lovable rogue who goes through life, sort of fumbling his way through it, and making the most of it. Similarly, in the Stormlight archive, you have Adolin. Again, that charmer who people can't resist liking them. Next character type, the more thoughtful yet careful, while stoically brave character in The Wheel of Time, you have Perrin Ibarra. While in the Stormlight, you have Renarin Colin. Both these characters are quieter, more thoughtful characters, but they're always there when you need them. Well, not me personally. I don't actually feature in either of these books, much to their loss. And some other characters that I felt had similarities, Nynaeve from Wheel of Time, and Shallan from the Stormlight Archive. Now, Shallan is a much more key character than Nynaeve, arguably. Although, to be fair, in the later book, Nynaeve gets a lot of page time. And they're both quite similar characters that are somewhat held back by their previous lifestyles and struggling with their newfound identities. And both characters of considerable power, whether they admit it or not. Who else is there? Oh, Moiraine, who is an older feminine character acting as a guide, and Navani, who fills much the same role in the Stormlight books. Keen scholars, as well as telling people what they need to hear when they need to hear it. And well, here's another character, Lan Mandragoran from the Wheel of Time. He's another one I thought was kind of split between two characters in the Stormlight Archive, those being Zahel, with both of these being tutors and sword masters, and men of few words, and similarly Hoyd, a character who just gives a few thought-provoking words when they're needed, prompting other characters to do what they probably knew they needed to do already. So let's talk about some of the differences between these books. The reason they're both really worth reading. They have very different magic systems, each unique and each kind of ingenious, that suits the story brilliantly. In the Wheel of Time, you have two forms of magic, those being male and female. Now, realistic, the magic forms are the same, but men and women have different strengths. The key difference being that for men using magic in the Wheel of Time, it drives them crazy. And I don't mean annoying crazy. I mean, there's a hill. I could pull that apart if I wanted. So I will. Because I'm crazy. And subsequently, the female wizards, witches, channelers as they're called, kind of hunt down those men and, well, they're not very nice to them. And in the Stormlight Archive, they use, well, a sort of finite power source, which is Stormlight, light from a magical storm, trapped within jewels. Quite innovative as a magic system, and there are 10 orders of surge binders, with 10 possible surges, and each of the 10 orders of surge binders can call upon 2 of the surges, as different characters with different powers, but each with a finite resource of Stormlight. On top of that, you have magical items. In the Wheel of Time, they're called Ter Angriel, and in the Stormlight, they're called Fabrials. So there's some similarities and some differences there. But the big difference that I really felt was in these books was the morality. Yep. The sense of right and wrong in what they're doing. Now, stay with me. I'll explain. You see, in the Wheel of Time, it's very clear-cut. Humanity and the forces of good are fighting against the Dark One, an evil force intent on destroying everything, simply because it is his nature to destroy. And it seems like it's going to be clear-cut in the Stormlight books. You've got humanity guided by the good god called Honor, fighting against the forces of evil and their soldiers, the Voidbringers, who work for the god Odium. Good versus evil, right? Ah, but there's a twist. And this is a huge spoiler, so you may want to skip it. In the third book, you find out that the Voidbringers were in fact the humans. Yes, it was the humans who were the original Voidbringers, who accidentally brought the evil god Odium to this world. Now, it doesn't quite explain how it all got switched around, and that the natives of the planet, the Parshmen, somehow became the Voidbringers, while it's the humans fighting against them. But it presents a big question of morality. The humans feel it is their duty to fight the Voidbringers, only to discover that they were the Voidbringers. Or at a more basic level, the humans are the invaders who came to that world, displacing the Parshmen who were the natives. So those humans who thought they were defending their homes, their rightful lands, only to discover that they're not their rightful lands, that their ancestors in fact stole them from the Parshmen and enslaved the Parshmen. And now the Parshmen, in the form of Voidbringers, are fighting back. And that question of morality does split the human forces, with some taking the side of the Voidbringers, because they feel that that is what is right. And even among those continuing to fight, there is that question, that doubt, about the justification of their war. It's an interesting twist, and considering it's kind of a magic system that depends on a sense of honour. And when the morality of what you're doing is called into question, will your magical powers continue to work? So I suppose in the Stormlight, the ultimate goal becomes to fight Odium. But how do you differentiate that from the people that he's enslaved? While in the Wheel of Time, it is much more clear-cut. You kill all the Trollocs because they're made of evil. You kill the Dark Friends because they've willingly gone to the evil side. It's just fighting evil at every level. And another point that I sort of felt was an interesting crossover between the two books. Magical blades that influence their carriers. In the Wheel of Time, you have the knife of Shade Alagath, who sort of poisons the minds of those that carry them. And in the Stormlight book, you have a weird talking sword carried by the assassin in white in the third book. Not quite sure how that blade fits into the story yet. We'll see as further books are released. And this question of morality does cause rifts. In Rashar, you've got... Now, there's also other questions of morality that cause rifts in a similar way in the Wheel of Time. So while in the Stormlight book, you've got this question of, well, who's actually on the right side? And that's causing some people, one of the orders of Surgebinders, called the Skybreakers, to fight for the other side, as well as some of the human nations. While in the Wheel of Time, at some point in the cycle, I can't remember which book, one of the major cultures in this book, the Aiel, face a national identity crisis, discovering that their history is something of a sham, and that their ancestors broke oaths, defying their entire cultural sense of identity, to form a new culture, based on almost entirely the opposite thing. And when they discover this, they have a breakdown, with huge swathes of the population either turning themselves into passive slaves, or fighting against the bulk of the nation. So that was quite a similar rift based on learning a cultural history. Again, a bit of crossover of ideas, implemented in different ways that both really work quite well. Now, I'll finish on a note where I'm not sure which will work better. We'll have to see how it pans out. But these are both, well, they were both planned to be 10-book epics. The Wheel of Time ended up being 13 books. The Stormlight is at book 3, and who knows, maybe it'll stop at 8, maybe it'll carry on to 15. We have no way of knowing currently. But it brings in a question of pacing. These are 10 large books, or 13, as the case may be. And that's quite a lot. Now, in the Wheel of Time, you have a character, or pretty much all the main characters, starting off as small-town rural folk who've never left their village. And it's taking 3 to 4 books for them to become the leaders, and or kings, or whatever the case may be, to get into that position of power, from where they can influence the rest of the world. While in the Stormlight series, at least one of the key characters, Dalinar, starts off pretty much as a king. Technically a high prince, but effectively the king in all but name. So he skips that sort of stage of building up a power base and a respect among the other nations that Rand had to do through 3 or 4 large books. Whether that will help with the pacing of the Stormlight series, I don't know, because we've potentially got quite a lot to go. We'll see. That's probably enough rambling from me. Both the series are very worth reading, and I do hope Mr. Sanderson doesn't take too long in releasing further Stormlight books. Bye!